Hi, Stephen here for the Idiot Quilter, and here's another interview in my series of interviews with subscribers. Enjoy. Good morning, everybody. It's Stephen here with another Idiot Quilter interview, and my special guest today is someone I'm not sure how many people are aware of you, but after this interview, they are going to be aware of you. And this is Ginger from the Copy Cat Quilter. We're going to talk about the webs or the YouTube channel and things in a few minutes. But what I want to know just right off the bat is, Ginger, where are you located in general?
I live outside Philadelphia in Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
I'm in the Philly burbs. And
The Philippines.
I've been here about 4 years. I was originally from Louisiana, so I grew up in the deep South
Oh.
and somehow found myself up here.
Yeah, well, that's great. I've never been to that area, but it's on my list of things to do at some point in time. So, I'm just trying to get my things organized here. All right. So, how long have you been quilting?
Well, I've been sewing since I was 6 or 7 years old. I have a picture of me in the first skirt I made myself in 4-H. And then somewhere along the way, I started doing quilting too. I think probably in my early 20s. I know my daughter's 33, and I know I made a baby quilt for her. So I was thinking the other day, I've had a sewing machine in my house my entire life from the time I was born until now. I don't think I've ever not had a sewing machine.
So, you have been around into quilting for quite a few years then, so I am sure you have learned a lot of things, and that'll probably come out in this interview as well. But
Yeah.
you said you started sewing, just sewing, when you were probably around the age of 6. So how did you get started? Was there somebody in your family that influenced you? Did you want to do it, or were you told, okay, you got to learn how to sew?
Well, my maternal grandmother was a huge quilter. She would quilt everything by hand, piece by hand, and quilt by hand, and make king size quilts for everyone in her
Oh, wow.
family. And my mom, whenever I was born, or probably before that even, she made all the clothes we ever wore. I can remember in my head the first time we drove to a store and I was buying a new dress for school. So I had to have been at least 5 or 6 or 7. And so it was just something we always did. And I did take 4-H, and especially in the deep South, that was really a big thing. So that was whenever I first started. But probably after that, I may have sewn some little baby doll clothes and things like that. I know when I went away to college, I took a sewing machine and I made clothes when I was in college. So it just seems like it's kind of always been there.
Just, yeah, always been there. And
Yeah.
partially out of necessity, partially out of, you wanted something new to wear, and clothes are expensive. So
Right.
of course, mind you, today anybody who thinks they can sew an outfit and it's going to be a lot cheaper
Yeah.
than buying it off in a store, not so much
Very
anymore.
true.
So you said your grandmother was a hand quilter and your mother always sewed. So my next question was, but I think you've answered it, were you influenced by anyone in your family? And I guess obviously the answer is your grandmother and your mother. Was there anybody,
Right. Yeah.
any aunts or any cousins? Was quilting and sewing something that was very familiar throughout your family? Or
Well, my mother is one of 13 kids, and my dad's one of 10, and they were both some of the youngest. So I don't know a lot of my aunts and uncles. Some of them probably had passed before I was even born,
right,
in their 50s and 60s, even. So we weren't close to, I was trying to think that, I think just there was just like this general idea, especially about making your own clothes,
yeah,
that, I don't remember sewing with other people, but it was just very prevalent. Everyone sewed.
right.
Everyone did some type of sewing.
And you said that you belong to 4-H. Now, I've heard of 4-H, but I don't know if I'm really clear on what 4-H is.
Um, I'm trying to remember. It's like hearts and hand, or there's 4-H's involved in it. But
Right,
basically, it was all kinds of programs you could do, woodworking, or there were just different gardening, different kind of classes and things you could take. And I was in one about sewing, and so we would have sessions or classes. I don't remember sewing in the class. I think we just learned about it. And I know I have some of the old handbooks I had from there where we learned things about like fashion design and what symmetry and asymmetry was, and contrast and things like that. So it definitely had a lot of impact and roots on me, because my mom may have not even had those words to talk about, oh, this is
Right.
symmetrical. Not that she's not intelligent, but you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
but
she
I don't,
wasn't
yeah,
trained. Yeah. And
yeah,
so she may not have even had those words to put to it. So I definitely learned a lot there, but not necessarily the sewing skills because I had that at home. I had my mom teach me that.
right. So I often associate 4-H with a farming community. Um,
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. It was something rural, teaching kids some basic fundamental life skills, I guess. And
Yeah.
was this an after school program or was it embedded right within the curriculum of the school day?
I think it was like an optional program you could take. We lived way out in the country, so I didn't do a lot of after school because it meant I couldn't ride the bus home.
Oh,
So I
right.
think it must have been like a club kind of thing at school, but you definitely could pick which areas you wanted to do. You know,
Okay.
it was more than just farming, but that's kind of what people think about the livestock and livestock
Yeah.
competitions and things like that. But there were other parts of it that you could do. So I think it must have been just like a club during school hours, maybe during a free time.
Right.
And then in high school, I did take home economics, and I remember I made a purple ley line skirt with a zipper. I think that was the project we did that year, and I
Right.
actually wore it. It was wearable. So, you know, I know that in high school it was a class you could take, a home
Yeah.
economics class.
Yeah. That they still exist today, but they don't call it that anymore. At least not in my area. They call it.
Yeah.
I know one of my friends who's a teacher who's does that kind of teaching. It's fashion arts, and they learn
Okay.
how to, go from a drawing board to the Judy to fitting and
Yeah.
everything like that. And I really wish that as a boy, they wouldn't let me take home ec when I was in high
No.
school because boys weren't allowed at that time. Today, that's
Yeah.
different. The boys can take
You
it.
probably had to take shop or woodworking or that
Yeah,
kind of a
and
thing,
I
right?
was not good with tools.
Yeah.
Yeah, but anyways, I missed out on that. Well, maybe in the next life. So do you have a favorite creation and why is it your favorite creation?
You know, I saw that on the list of questions you sent, and I've heard other people say my favorite thing is probably the last thing I made. So I don't have anything that like really stands out in my mind of just this was the absolute greatest project, except I just realized I did, it was clothing though. At the time, my kids were small. I think my daughter was maybe 4 and my son was like 2. In the deep South, people do the hand stitching and the smocking and the heirloom lace stuff. So I did make a dress and a little jumpsuit for him, and it was full of the French lace, shaped lacing where you shaped it yourself and things like that. And it actually was put into a reader's gallery in So Beautiful
Oh,
magazine, Martha Pullen. That's older,
yeah.
but I was pretty proud of that, and I still have those.
Yeah, well,
Obviously, like if they
yeah.
made it into a reader's gallery, I'm keeping them. So that was probably the most elaborate, you know, kind of thing that really stretched my skill level.
Yeah. I mean, it is an unfair question because you're right. As quilters, our answer usually is the last thing I made. It was my favorite.
Yeah.
I think it's because we can't remember what other things we made. We made so many. But yeah, but I
True.
notice you have a very beautiful creation right behind you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Oh, that's I went to a G's Bend retreat last year down in Mississippi, and I'm so impressed with these ladies. Like I had learned about them and read a lot before I went to the retreat. I was actually at the Metropolitan Museum of Art one day in New York City. We were just there for a weekend, just wandered in the museum, walked around the corner, and there was a display of their quilts. And like I could have fallen on the floor. I was so excited. So
Yeah,
after
they're
that, I
beautiful.
started looking up more online about them. I'd already read books and things about them, and I found out they had a retreat. So I signed up for that retreat, and I started that one while I was there. And it's wonky. It might be hard to see on the wall, but one side actually droops lower than the other. but
So you just hold that
but
up higher.
well, that's kind of their style, you know. That's
Yeah,
kind of the
yeah,
thing, and
yeah,
everything was kind of freeform cut. I do still cut straight lines because that's just me.
yeah.
I use a ruler, but some of it I may have freestyle. And then I actually started a second quilt. I didn't quilt this while I was there. I finished the top. I actually started a second one while I was there that I started cutting some curves into. So it's very similar to this one, but it's got curves cut into the striping. So I hope to get that one finished up soon and find a wall big enough maybe where I could hang them side by side.
Yeah, that's always a problem trying to display our quilts. I've run out of wall space in my house. I need another house just for quilts, I think. But
Exactly.
that's not going to happen anytime soon. So, how would you describe yourself as a quilter? Now, this is an unfair question as well. I have a lot of unfair questions because I'm asking you to label yourself. And, I don't think any of us fit comfortably into a label. But would you
Yeah.
say you tend to lean more towards traditional or more towards modern or experimental or freeform? How would you characterize that?
I I like it all. I read a book one time about careers that call people scuba divers or snorkelers, and it said, scuba divers were the ones that were well trained and focused on one area, and it's very technical, and they saw little, like almost like tunnel vision. And then snorkelers kind of float around on the top and look at three fish. So I'm definitely that. I've done some modern things. I tend to lean probably more towards traditional patchwork because I love piecing, but I don't I never make a quilt that's somebody else's pattern. I don't have the attention span to do that, and I have no desire to recreate someone else's quilt.
Right.
Um, and I know there are people that do that, and so everything I make is kind of an experiment. But a lot of my pieces do turn out very traditional piecing, as far as half square triangles and things like that, and points that match. And then
Right.
now and then I do something like this, just like, there's not a point on there. And if it's not big enough, you throw another strip on the side. So I do enjoy that too.
Yeah, that's kind of freeing, isn't it? That if you can break
Yeah.
away from the rules, so to speak,
Yeah.
and just, throw a caution. And I think that's what bogs down some people, especially when they first get into quilting. They see a
No,
pattern they
definitely.
like, they want to make it exactly there. And I learned because I'm an idiot when it comes to making mistakes. I do it all the time. So I don't think yet have I ever taken a pattern. I've started with a pattern, but it ends up being my own version, sometimes on purpose, sometimes not so much on purpose. Depends on
Yeah.
what I do. I think every quilt I've ever made has got some little feature in it that I like to call my mistakes customizations. But you work
Yeah.
around it. And I don't think you should get too uptight about it either because it's supposed to be fun. And
Right. Right.
if you limit yourself to, okay, I have to do exactly what this pattern says, and you never go outside of that box, well, you're missing out on a whole lot of other things you could be learning
Yeah.
and
True.
enjoying with it. So yeah. So I assume you are in your sewing area. So can you describe it for us?
I have I try to think of the word. I'm not lucky or fortunate because I work hard and pay for my own things. So I have the fruits of my labor, I guess, around me. I have an 11 by 18 room. It's our, I guess it's the second bedroom in the house, but there's not a bed in here. It has a full length wall closet on the back that is loaded up with shelves. And this room is only for that, except over in one side, I do have my desk. I work from home. Um, so I have the bad work thing there, but it actually makes it okay to know that I'm paying for all this stuff behind me. It
Right.
can be
Yeah.
very distracting.
Mhm.
But yeah, and I have my boyfriend is a carpenter, and he scored some base cabinets on a kitchen that they were demoing. And so there's two huge base cabinets, and I have a table on it that's at least 50 something by
Wow.
36.
Oh,
And
nice.
that's my cutting table. I'm also a gadget person, so I don't think you can see. I have a projector on the ceiling that
Oh,
projects onto my cutting table whenever I want to uh, trace a design or blow something up. I have a projector screen that I pull down and put flannel on as a design wall. So I have
cool.
the setup.
Yeah, you do have the setup. That's what it
Yeah,
sounds like. But we should never apologize for the things that we
exactly.
have bought and what we have in there because it is a hobby, it is expensive. But like I just did a huge fabric haul kind of a thing. I spent over $2,400 on fabric, and I know
Wow,
yeah,
that's a big haul.
exactly. Yeah, I mean, I know I could hear the jaws dropping when I was talking about it. But what I also told people was I'm not rich. I'm retired. I'm on a pension. I have a good pension. I had a good job, but I saved a lot of money. And that's
Yeah,
what I do when I want something in my sewing room. I budget it. I set money aside. I'm not going into
right.
debt for this. And I have a fabric budget. And that fabric budget, I hadn't bought a lot of fabric in a while. So it grew. So, I mean, I don't make any excuses for it. I saw it. I
Right.
I did it. I planned for it. So yeah. So,
I'm the
some,
same way. People
yep,
will say, like, I have a lot of machines. I have a serger, a Sashiko, a Pfaff behind me, an embroidery machine in the closet, and a featherweight. And that's a lot of my, and I also have a long arm downstairs in the basement. So my room has expanded to the basement. But I have a really good friend that's retired, and she always tells me, buy your toys while you can afford them, and then you have them when you're retired.
yeah,
And it's
very
like,
true.
I do work hard for my money. I just, like you said, I don't go into debt over buying sewing machines or things, but this is my joy and my passion. And just like other people, I remember the first like real sewing machine I bought, which meant like over $100. We went into the sewing store, and it was me and my ex-husband, and we went in, and I was looking at a machine. I love Nancy Zeman. I grew up watching Sewing with Nancy every Saturday morning. I cried when she passed because
Yes.
I just felt like she was a friend.
Yeah.
But we walked into the store, and she had sewn on a Pfaff 1475 that was on her TV show forever, and that's what I wanted. And we walked in, and they don't have the prices out.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
whenever I asked, how much is it? She looked over at my husband, and she says, let me put this in perspective. She's like, do you have a bass boat? And she says, this is her bass boat.
Yeah.
And it's true. You spend the money on things that bring you joy. And I understand people on a budget can't afford those things, and that's fine. And that's great. Um, I have a lot of money invested in machines, and I enjoy and use them all.
Yep. And the thing is, it's a hobby, and all hobbies, whether it's quilting,
Right.
scrapbooking, whatever you do, they all cost money. And if it, like you said, if it brings you happiness, if it, like that expression, if it brings you joy, then
Right.
as long as it doesn't bring you stress if you're going into debt for all this stuff, no. But buy them when you can, and you've thought about it, you budgeted for it, and
Right.
and you can wait. You don't need it all right now. I mean, as sewers, as quilters, we do acquire machines. I've got about 4 sitting in, you can't see the room behind me, but yeah, in there. I love gadgets as well. And my husband does garment sewing, and I know about the projector idea. He doesn't have a
Yeah.
projector. We do have a projector, but his sewing room is very tiny, and he doesn't want to bother with that. He pieces the PDFs together,
Yeah.
kind of a thing. And
I do that too. I still do some garment sewing. So yeah, I use it for that too.
but he's looked into the idea too, because I think he belongs to a sewing group, and one of the ladies in that has a projector too and uses it.
Yeah.
So yeah, if some people think all this technology, we're moving away from what sewing and quilting was all about, and I say no, this
Yeah.
is the 21st century way to do it. You know,
Right.
I mean, do you bang your clothes on a rock by the riverside when you want to wash them? No
And
reason.
squeeze them through a roller.
Yeah, exactly. So no, 21st century. So I make no excuses for having the gadgets. I love the gadgets.
Yeah.
So do you have, now you said you have different sewing machines, but do you have a favorite tool or technique or both? Something you
There's
can't
another
live
one I
without,
probably don't.
usually.
Uh, well, actually, my absolute favorite thing is AccuQuilt. I got into it maybe 3 years ago now. Love, love, love it. And I took forever to get into it, because you think I like to make up my own patterns. I'm not going to follow somebody else's pattern. And so I really resisted it for a long time. But I got the cube set. And from that, it has all those shapes. And I have never made an AccuQuilt pattern. If I see a pattern that I like, I figure out if I have AccuQuilt shapes that'll cut it.
Yep.
I may make it. If I have to make a half square triangle without AccuQuilt, I'm probably not making that quilt. So that's really my favorite. I use it on everything. And it's another one of those things. It's expensive,
Yep.
and it's another one of those things that people say. And when we were talking about money, I was thinking, it's a continuum. You can start sewing with $150 machine,
Yep.
and and buying very inexpensive tools and not having a lot, and having a desk that you store things in. You can start that way, and you can end up with a full-blown room. And my room studio is not even as big and advanced as a lot of people, but it's really a continuum.
Yep.
And the AccuQuilt's kind of the same way. You can start with a smaller piece, but I really do love it. And some of my videos, you can see the analytics when people drop. Sometimes if I mention the word AccuQuilt, it's just boom. And I always show a rotary cutter way or whatever, but for me, I am always going to pull out an AccuQuilt whenever I make a machine. Even improv stuff, I will cut strips that I can use, or I'll cut a bunch of triangles and fit them in, So that's definitely got to be my favorite tool.
Yeah, I drank the Kool-Aid too with an AccuQuilt. I resisted it for quite a while. Mainly, I was thinking it is an expensive tool, and and it goes on because you have to buy the cube sets, and you have to, for that, your set will grow. And I thought, will I really use it? Oh, yeah, I do. I like you. I use it for everything. I think I have I do have all the cube sets and the companion ones for them, and I've got various what they call bobs, block on boards and different.
Right.
I've even got some I haven't opened yet, and I've had them for a year.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah,
I'll admit I have some.
Yeah, I love the AccuQuilt, and it's great with, I know exactly what you mean. When you start to say AccuQuilt, your subscriber base does, many of them just glass over, they speed forward or drop that video on you because, and I think for a lot of them, it's because it is the expense of it. And yeah, it is. It's a very, very expensive tool. But if you've got a lot of scraps, the AccuQuilt is a godsend. I sit down and spend maybe an hour, grab a handful of scraps and decide, okay, this, sort them out. I can make 5-inch squares out of this, make my own charm packs. Just did that with a whole bunch of old Christmas fabrics the other day, or strips, the whole bit. It's beautiful when you want to go do your binding.
I was going to say that the cost of like the Go Me, it's not the baby anymore, the small one.
Yeah.
I think you can get it on sale around 100 maybe. That and the 2.5-inch strip die could just make you happy forever. Because you can cut those 2.5-inch strips and you can turn them sideways and cut them into squares. Probably when I bought it, I was thinking about binding, but then I did get into, the cubes. Oh my God, shapes. And I have several of them because the 4-inch cube matches with the 8 and with the 12, and it just goes on and on.
Yeah, it goes on and on. That's what I bought it for too. Was my first thought was I want the 2.5-inch die for binding with it. And I just cut some this morning before we came on here too. I'm binding a quilt right now. So yeah, they're great, but yes, it is an expensive tool. So if you had, speaking of money, if you had all the money in the world, is there a piece of equipment you would invest in? Now, a lot of people tell me on this one, oh yeah, they'd get a long arm, but you've already done that. You've got a long arm. So is there something else that you would want?
Well, my machine is a long arm, but it's on a 5-foot frame. So it's the small frame. Handy Quilter makes on mine, happens to be a baby lock. So definitely a larger frame, but that's like $1,200. So that's not the, if I had all the money in the world. I'm really not sure. I would like the multi-needle embroidery machine because I have, a single needle with the sewing machine. I have a friend that has the multi-needle, and she does a lot of really cool embroidery that puts into quilts. She does a lot of that. But really, I really don't know. It's like, I just don't know. Somebody asked me that a couple of weeks ago, like, if you won the lottery. And I'm like, I really don't know. I don't want an enormous house. It's just me and my partner, and we don't need that. And, it's just like, I'm really at a point where I'm pretty content with life, but I'm sure I could find things to spend it on.
Oh, yeah. If you had it, you could find things to spend it on as well. Now, with your long arm that you have, then do you do a lot of free motion on it, or are you just an edge to edge with a pantograph or something like that?
I only have the free motion option. I don't have the Pro Quilter. Is that what it's called? I don't have the computerized thing, and I actually don't have the handlebars on the back, so I can't do the pantographs. I do free motion and rulers. I like playing with the rulers. But actually, my partner just retired a couple of months ago, and he was a carpenter forever. And he's like, oh, I think I could do this. And got down there and first quilt 10 times better than anything I've ever done. And he's like, this feels like a router, And so he has that hand-eye coordination. So he's kind of taken over the long arm. I think that's maybe his now. but he loves the rulers for the precision, and
Right.
he's a precision guy, and he has done some loopy kind of stuff, but really he really excels at the rulers.
Yeah.
So and I like the rulers.
Isn't that funny how if we get our partners into this, they end up doing things better than us. I got my husband into this. He took a quilting class. His first quilt was a stained glass quilt. I mean, not a
Wow.
beginner quilt, right? It came out beautiful. And then he turns around and says, yeah, I think I'd rather make garments. So now he makes all of our shirts, and he's made pants, and he's made shorts, and he's made a jacket. That is his thing. That's what he likes. So
Yeah.
but he just picked up stuff, and I said, oh, you're going to do a stained glass? Well, oh my God. I said, I've done one of those. That took forever. Yeah, it was beautiful. Yep. And the whole bit. And I have a long arm as well, and machine. And now he hasn't really got on that yet. He keeps saying, well, I should try this all out and use it. I have a
Yeah.
computer on mine because I don't have the patience to practice the free motion. I should, but I don't.
Yeah.
And but he would probably sit there if he got right onto it and started just doing. I can guarantee you the free motion would be okay. Yeah, very nice.
What and my free motion's a lot of loop de loops and meandering
Yeah,
and stippling. I would like to try to learn some of the wreaths and things like that, some of the traditional things,
yeah,
but I have rulers for that. I just haven't had time to spend
yeah.
to do it. And I'm never going to do like a whole cloth quilt with wreaths, and that's not my style anyway. So loop de loops and meanders and squiggles work really good for me. And then maybe some ruler somewhere to do like triangles. I call them chasing triangles. I have a ruler that does triangles in a row, and I like that one. But
There's there,
it's like I'm happy with what I can do with it.
yeah. Well, there's a little bit of a what do you call it? A faction within long arm quilting, the free motioners. When they hear you're using a computer, they sometimes poo-pah it.
Yeah.
And they're very proud of the fact that they can do feathers and things like that. And yeah, I admire that. I think that's a great skill. But don't shame us in this. Like I refuse to
Yeah.
be shamed because I don't do free motion. I admire it. I admire the skill, the time, and it took for somebody to perfect that skill. That's not me. But you put me on that computer that's on that machine, and I can dance it all around and do all kinds of things with it. But I'm into it for the tech. I love 21st century quilting is what I call it. So let's switch topics here and talk a little bit about, have you ever belonged to an in-person group like a guild or design team or even an online kind of thing?
Yes, yes, yes. I'm a member of two different guilds. One, I had to drive over an hour away. It's close to where I used to live. And for some reason, when I lived there, I didn't go to it, but now I do. And I knew some of the people at the guild. I just never ended up at the guild meetings. But we have a lot of fun there. We do a lot of charity work. Most of my quilts go to charity. I have some that I give to friends or family, but probably at least 80% goes to charity because I just enjoy making them. And
Yeah.
I get my joy in the making. And we have one bed in the house. We don't need a lot of quilts. And I've got one on the couch to snuggle with. So kind of we're done with quilts. And I don't really like table runners and those things, just not my thing. But so we make a lot of things for charity with that guild. And then the other guild that I'm a member of has a mix of Zoom and in person. And I actually haven't been to any of the in-person meetings. I've logged into some of the Zooms. It's much closer to me, and they have a big cool show every year. So it's more of like a traditional guild, but they do have some workshops and things that you get a discount if you're a member. So like this coming up Saturday, I have a workshop about curves, about improvisational curves, but it's Zoom.
Yeah.
But yeah, I enjoy that. And then I do take a lot of online Zoom classes. There's some stores around me that teach lessons, but not a lot, especially after COVID. It doesn't seem like
Yeah.
there's been a lot of those come back. So I do take Zoom classes frequently and do that. So yeah, I have a lot of quilting friends and buddies and and activities.
I think COVID, one of the positive things, well, I think is positive
Yeah.
about COVID was the whole world of Zoom, because like you, I do a lot of things on Zoom. belong to groups on Zoom and so days and things like that. And I really enjoy that over going to
Yeah.
a physical retreat. I don't have to lug any of my stuff with me, and you always forget something when you go to that. So, and I can see the other people and I can see what they're working on if they want to share it in the whole bit. If I have a problem with something, I throw it out there and there's
Yeah.
probably at least 10 people on that Zoom who all can give me a hand with it and everything. And I know some people prefer the in-person retreats for one reason or another, but actually I prefer the Zoom. It's easy enough to do. I don't have to go anywhere. So I'm very happy
It
with
does
that.
depend. I mean, the G's band, it was like recess for 4 days. We're just playing, and because there was no program, they
Right.
didn't teach anything. The couple of the ladies that are from G's Band Cooperative walked around and would help you, and then they would break out the song. They both sing at their church in choirs, and they would just break out and start singing songs. And we had all of our meals together. The retreat center was actually, I don't know, I guess an economically depressed hotel that we were the only ones there.
Oh,
So, there were quilts laid in the hallways, and that was incredible. That was so much fun. And they had the room open 24/7. You did your own thing. You could do things together. But then I also went to an in-person retreat with my guild with friends. Like, I didn't know anybody at the Mississippi retreat. I went completely by myself.
mm,
Didn't know a soul there. Whenever I went with my guild friends, and I hope they don't watch the video, I was like overwhelmed. I think there were 10 or 12 of us, but we ate communal meals, which we did at G Spin too, but we brought communal meals.
mm,
Um, and I have an introvert streak, and I was just overwhelmed with people
yeah.
around me all day, every day. And like someone was playing music, and it annoyed me they're playing music because I may turn on a Lifetime movie on the
Yeah.
TV while I'm sewing, but that means I'm not paying any attention to it because I know the plot, whether I've seen it or not. So I think it really depends on the retreat. The
Yeah.
freestyle, just to have fun thing was incredible. In fact, this March, they open up the next year's, there's 3 or 4 a year. So like the one that I went to in March, they open up next March registration at that retreat. I'm signed up for next March and I will be signed up for the March. That's going to be my annual pilgrimage to
Yeah.
somewhere quilt related, because it was just so much fun and just got so much out of it. But then, like I said, some retreats I think are going to be like that, and
Yeah.
some aren't.
Yeah, it does depend. I've been to several in-person retreats. Many of them I had a really good time at. But there were a couple where, being overwhelmed a little bit. I understand exactly what you mean. And because I was the only guy in this
Yeah.
retreat with like about 25 ladies, they wouldn't leave me alone. They kept coming and look, what are you working on now? What are you doing? And then some of them were just a little too helpful, they made
Yeah.
this assumption because I think I was a male that I definitely needed help, that I didn't know what I was doing. And in
Yes.
cases that was true. I did need help, but yeah, so that's one reason why I do prefer the Zooms. But having said that, I'm going off to an in-person retreat, which my husband and
Oh,
I are both going, but it's in Georgia at Christmas. So
oh,
yeah, and we're in outside of Toronto, Ontario. So it's like
right.
1,500 kilometer trip, 1,000-mile trip, because we're driving down there, and
Oh,
I'm looking forward to it, but I'm not absolutely sure what to expect. We're taking a chance here, but it's a really good friend of mine. You may have heard of her, Stephanie Stitches, that's
yeah.
on
Yeah.
YouTube, and she's the one that's running it. And I trust her with it also. Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to have a good time, but it's a long trip to go,
Yeah. Yeah.
for that kind of thing. But nothing ventured, nothing gained. So, um, do you have a favorite store in your area you go to get your materials, or are you more of an online shopper or a combination thereof?
I do a lot more online shopping. It's you said something earlier, and I know people can get really snobby, and I think especially women, we get very judgmental or categorize people into categories, your parenting style, or did you put your kids in daycare or stay home? Like, I think women are just like masters at separation and dividing people, good and bad.
Yeah.
But whenever I lived in New Jersey, the store that I had close, I loved. And now I have a store 5 minutes around the corner from me,
Oh,
but I don't really enjoy it because it doesn't feel like home. They don't know my name when I walk in,
uh,
and
mhm.
it's the funniest thing. They recently changed owners, and I think it's a little better. But it's like Dana will make fun of me and say, well, you're just going there to buy stuff. I'm like, no, no, no. If I'm going to buy stuff, I go to Joann's.
Yeah,
If I'm going
yeah,
in a quilt shop close to me, I expect people to know my name or to chit chat. What are you making?
yep,
So I do a lot of online. I love Missouri Star and Fat Quarter Shop. I also go on Etsy a lot because they're smaller businesses, but they also tend to have older stuff sometimes. If you see a
right.
panel that you like, you can find it on Etsy when you may not be able to find it on any of the bigger stores. But I actually do drive back and forth that hour to get to the shop. It used to be my home shop,
Mm,
but they've also changed to where they don't carry as much fabric. I think I've probably bought every machine I have in here. I'm pretty sure every machine in here I've bought from them, and I go back there for service. So I tend to do the online, and there was someone close here who had a real small shop, and I loved her. She was in her 20s, and she just had the greatest eye for colors and things. And it was this tiny little store, maybe not even as big as this room, and she had bolts of fabric, ceiling to floor. But she closed right before the pandemic. She sold, so it was actually very fortunate. It was a heartbreaking decision for her to sell her shop or to close. And then it's like 5 months later, it would have been closed for her.
yeah,
So
yeah, exactly.
I did enjoy that. I prefer to have a local shop, but I just don't. I
Yeah.
just don't have one now that really, turns me on the way some other local shops did.
And that's something that I've talked about before on my channel is um if a quilt store has a reasonable selection at reasonable prices, that's good. But what really keeps me coming back is their customer service. And like you said, they know
Yeah,
my name. I have my local quilt shop here. They're great. I know all the ladies. I don't consider them people that work in the store. I consider them all friends. I make them stuff at Christmas time for them all because they've treated me so well in there, and it's nice. It's not just going in and buying fabric, but you're going in and you're socializing as
right.
well. And I think that the atmosphere, makes people come back. If there's another one just recently I was at. It's not a place I go to often. If I'm in the area, I might drop into it. Small little place,
Yeah,
very cold when we walk in. And we have heard from other, at first we thought it was because we're men the first time we went in there and that happened, but no, we heard from other ladies that nope, that's the way they are there. They don't warm up to you until they hear that cash register chinging along that. And so I'm hard pressed to suggest a place like that to somebody
yeah.
else. And they have a good selection of fabric. Their prices are okay and everything like that, but it's the atmosphere, you know. And as you said, well, I can't go to a Joann's because we don't have Joann's here, but we have the equivalent, which is called Michael's. I could
Yeah.
always go to Michael's if I want, cold, sterile, get in, get out kind of thing with that. So yeah, atmosphere is important.
I actually
So
love talking about that even too. It's not even like living outside Philadelphia. There are huge, huge stores in Philadelphia. Not a lot of quilting shops, but just kind of what you were saying. Like it doesn't even if they don't know your name, there's a feeling when you go in. And if it's a place that you go in frequently, I want them to know my name,
yeah,
unless they have tens of thousands of customers. If it's
yeah,
in
right.
downtown
Yeah,
Philly, okay, you may not remember my name, you may remember my face.
yeah,
But we travel, and when we travel, I'm always Google where's the quilt shops near me. And even those quilt shops, you stop. I've been in there once, and I probably will never be back. But they strike up a conversation with you, and what are you going to make? And let me show you this. And you just get this feeling, and that's
yeah,
that's one of the things I really love about quilting. That's very different than it used to be. Is the community. I am a member of guilds. I do go to conferences. I know people who quilt, and we do show and tell. Our guild, you can take a sewing machine. Some months we do sit and sew after, but I don't do a lot of that. It's more just showing off your work, or we may have a project that we compare. But that sense of walking in the store and feeling like you're a friend, and they're quilters. Like they're not just someone that opened a fabric shop. They
yeah,
are quilters,
exactly.
and they want
Yeah,
to know. And it's like that's a very, very different atmosphere, whether they know you personally or not. Because I have hit lots of quilt shops on travels. pretty much if we go anywhere, there's going to be a quilt shop in the
Yep.
area that we're going to stop at.
I'm
So
the same way.
that's good.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
So, do you have any favorite sources or experts of information or assistance when you need help or inspiration that you turn to on a regular basis?
Well, I'm definitely a YouTube junkie. I have a YouTube channel and I watch everybody's YouTube channel. Um, I, used to watch Sewing Nancy. I loved Nancy. Martha Pullen had a show with the French hand sewing. That one's a lot older. I have my DVR set to any kind of sewing show that's on now. There's a new one called like Fresh Quilting, I think, that's more like the modern, and that one's really interesting. They have really nice, though they do have a modern aesthetic,
Right.
but it's like I'm so obsessed with quilting. I guess I kind of see it everywhere. So I'll see something. I actually had to go to the doctor's office recently, and I'd never been in the building, and it pointed go this way, and I started going that way, and there was a quilt on the wall, and I stopped and took pictures, and oh my God, I was reading a little plaque about it, and I got down the end of the hall, and someone came walking through, and she was pretty rude to me, and she's like, "Well, you have to register up there." I'm like, "Okay, well, I didn't know," and she's like, "Well, there's signs." So I walked back up where I needed to register, and I turned around, and there I had walked past like huge signs saying, register here before you go there. But I'd seen that quilt.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's like,
yeah, yeah.
but
Focus.
yeah. So, but I love, like, one of my videos I made not too long ago was ugly wallpaper quilt, because we had traveled somewhere and I'm in the bathroom at I don't know what hotel. And the wallpaper was hideous. It was just ugly wallpaper. And I'm sitting there going, this is geometric. I could figure this out. And I made a quilt from it. So it's just kind of wherever. And I do love to watch videos, and I have a lot of books and things, so I do that too. But really, I'm just always in quilt mode. I'm
Yeah,
always thinking what can be a quilt.
I'm very much like that too. And the same thing, you get inspiration from anything. You go into a hotel lobby and you look at the tiles on the floor and you go, "Ooh,
Exactly.
that's an interesting design.
Yeah.
I could do something with that." And so there
And
I
now
am
you
with
can
the
take
camera.
pictures.
Yeah. Yep. You take the pictures and the whole bit. Oh yeah, definitely a quilt junkie too. But I think most people in quilting are quilt junkies as well. And the
Yeah.
University of YouTube, as I've heard some people call it, I mean, that's basically where I learned most of what I know, because I've only been quilting for about 6 years. And I've learned a lot just from YouTube, and I have all my regulars, and I'm always looking for new channels as well, for
Yeah.
inspiration, or, a spin on something that I may already
Right.
know, but you always learn something. You can always learn something. So speaking of YouTube, let's talk about your channel. Your channel's called the Copy Cat Quilter. Now, I have to ask you, how did you come up with that name? Copycat. That
Well, I actually got criticism when it first started, that someone, I'm not trying to take money out of designers' hands. I'm never going to show how to make a quilt that someone has for sale, a pattern. But I think my byline is you can't copyright a nine patch, because if my grandmother could have made it without a pattern in the 50s and 60s,
yeah.
then the fact that you put out a nine patch design with setting triangles, I'm sorry. But I never use anybody's pattern to show how to make their pattern, if it's a pattern for sale. Or even, I have made some quilts from patterns that I saw online, but I asked the people if I could use their picture,
Right.
and it would be someone that like posted in a Facebook group something that they made. So I will never use a picture. But when we were talking earlier about if you do a pattern, or if you follow someone's instructions, or you make it up in your head or whatever, I will not tell my mother about this video, so she won't be offended. But she's a big quilter. I actually bought her AccuQuilt so that whenever I went to visit, I had AccuQuilt there. But she is one of those people that buys the pattern and the fabrics that they suggest with the pattern, and she makes that exact quilt. I have some kind of phone going off over there. Hold on, let me turn that off.
This happens.
Okay.
This is real life.
Yeah. So, I say my mother will make the pattern from the fabrics and from the pattern, and that's how she makes it. She makes beautiful quilts, and she makes a lot of quilts, but that is her way, and that brings her joy. That's the way
Yeah.
she enjoys making quilts. My channel, I want to show people that you can see a pattern. You can look at a quilt that you like, and you can pick apart the pieces, and you can make it without a pattern, and you can modify it. But that you can make quilts without patterns. And it's interesting because that's really the whole theme of my channel. And I will have people comment, well, where can I get the pattern? I'm like, well,
Yeah.
that's kind of the point. There is no pattern.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of what I meant by the copycat, is just to be able to see patterns or even wallpaper that you like and be able to copy that into a quilt, but nothing to do with, you know,
No,
taking credit for other people's work.
no. So when did you start the channel?
February.
So you're
It's,
new. That's what I thought.
yeah, it's been really successful though. I mean, I'm not in the hundred thousands, but I was really surprised how fast I hit the 1,000 subscribers and the 4,000 hours views. And I think people enjoyed that. And I think sometimes being new, people may come watch you, like you said, you Google and there's someone new, or you search on YouTube, there's someone new. But I definitely have gotten people that tell me that they really enjoy that type of quilting themselves. So even though they're already skilled at that, they learn things from my channel too. So it's really been fun.
Well, it's inspirational, like you
Yeah.
watch it and you go, oh, when someone's watching one of your videos and you're doing something maybe specific, they may be taking that idea and go, well, yeah, but if I did this, it's always giving you inspiration. And I just watched the other day, the one where I think it was your daughter, the mathematician on there.
Yeah.
Okay, I have to tell you one thing. She lost me on because one of the things I was really bad at in school, I call myself geometrically challenged, because angles and triangles and things, I can
Yeah.
mix those up like crazy. But it was interesting hearing her perspective as a mathematician about the isosceles triangle and equilaterals and right angle and all the things in that, because quilting is very mathematical. And I think you said in that video too, you come from a mathematical background
Oh yeah.
as
Yeah.
well. So that might explain why you're very comfortable with looking at something and figuring out how you're going to do it, because you've got
Yeah,
the
definitely. Yeah.
analytical brain with that. Whereas I look at something and go, I probably could do that, but I know it's not going to turn out like that, because I have the opposite of whatever analytical is. I have a very,
The other one.
yeah, the
Yeah.
other one. I don't know, crazy, whatever.
Well,
So,
that is my profession. I've been doing computer programming over 30 years now. I started right before she was born. And I am the director over a statistical programming group where we do analysis to submit for new drugs to the FDA for approval. So all that little small print on the back of those drug
yeah,
ads, I'm the one that's counting all that stuff. And that came very naturally to me. That was not my degree. So yeah, I know my brain is that wired that way. Just not even numbers as much as proportions and relationships between things. And that's also a very musical thing. And
yeah,
I am huge into music, and my daughter is very musical too. And it's that seeing that pattern and the repetitions and the spacing and the proportions.
yeah,
So yeah, it does come natural to me. And I don't think it means I'm smarter than anyone else or anything like that. I have a son that is not his skill set, but if you want someone who can engage people and inspire people, that's him, So it's like it's definitely in my brain. And that was kind of a funny video because I got so many arguments about whether it was an equlateral or an isosceles. I'm like, okay, my daughter has a math and physics degree. She can she can be accurate and settle the argument whether you like it or not. So
yeah.
that was just kind of something fun to do together. But I learned stuff too. But
I learned
yeah,
stuff from it as well. Whether I'll retain it, I don't know. But I did
yeah,
learn stuff. I was kind of fascinated by what she was talking about and how it applied to quilting and that kind of thing.
yeah.
So what do you have any future plans or goals for your YouTube channel? Things that you might want to do in the future with it or
I
develop?
have right now it's still new enough. I don't see like going into a different direction. But
Right.
with my quilting, one of the reasons I started the YouTube channel was I would like to be able to eventually, when I retire, teach, and maybe travel and teach, and also have patterns, which is kind of funny given the opposite of I'm anti-pattern on my YouTube channel. But I do have a pattern right now that I had some people assist me in writing, and we're finishing that up to maybe publish my first pattern. So the YouTube thing I just like to keep fun. But I think, a lot of people do start and kind of change their niche. I think I'm going to just kind of do what I'm doing, just show my thought process of making up a quilt, what I think about I am definitely show my errors kind of person because I'm just not a perfectionist. And a lot of times on my videos, I'll say that's that other channel. If you're looking for the precision quilter, that's not me.
That's why I
So
started
yeah,
mine too, to show mistakes, because I was watching so many YouTubes when I first got started in this, and everybody's quilt was perfect. And I'm going, why is mine not? I'm doing this.
yeah,
Why is this not coming out? And then I got thinking, yeah, they're not showing their mistakes or how they
right.
correct them. So I show all my mistakes. I point them out before anybody else can go, yep, that's wrong. And I have a husband that has a really good eye. So every quilt that I do, and he'll look at it, and within 30 seconds, he'll go, what happened there? I'm like,
Yeah.
damn.
I've got that partner too. I made a wall hanging one time for him, and across the room, he looked at it and was like, it's like an eighth of an inch skewed. And I'm like, shut up. And he took a tape measure, and it was like
Yep.
an eighth of an inch. And how you could see that across the room, but I mean, his background is carpentry, and he cares about an eighth or a 16th of an inch. And I'm like, my ruler doesn't do that. My
Yeah,
ruler does not have 16ths.
yeah, that's why I say I did that on purpose. It's a customization.
There you go.
Yeah.
It's a
And don't,
design feature.
yeah, it's a design feature. So do you have any, I'll be putting the links for your YouTube channel down in the show notes when this goes up too, so people can check you out.
Sure.
I definitely encourage them to do so, because I'm enjoying going through the videos. You don't have a lot yet, but you only started since February, and I'm
Yeah.
enjoying going through your various ones as well, because I'm learning some stuff there too, and I'm finding some inspiration. So I hope
Nice.
you will continue with the YouTube channel, and I'm sure you will, because I look forward to your future videos. But
Thank
do you
you.
have any challenges or goals for the future in terms of projects you might like to do? And I'm not talking about necessarily on your YouTube channel, just maybe in your quilting life in general.
Well, I definitely want to get the one pattern out. And I have design ideas for so many more, but I feel like it's kind of like that first video you put out. You just have to do it, and once you get past that one.
Yeah.
Um, I think on my YouTube channel, I like the playlist, or the idea of doing like multiple videos for one kind of thing. So like this summer I've been doing panels, which I've always thought of as kind of cheating quilting. You've got a panel, you do stuff around it, but I've enjoyed that because I'm finding other things to do around it. So I think I would like to focus some on groups of videos like that. The triangle and square equilateral isosceles, whatever triangle is, that specific shape always makes a lot of movement in a quilt, makes circle, makes it look like curves when it's not. So I think I'm probably going to do a pretty good series of, you know, uh, quilts with a triangle and a square to get that movement and that roundness feature.
Right.
So other than that, it's still just fun for me. I've got a
Yeah.
full-time job. This is my happy place. And so I don't have a lot of like goals that I'm just
Yeah.
driven towards. I'm always thinking, what's the next fun thing to do? But I do think that would be kind of fun to do groups of videos about
Yeah.
specific techniques.
Yeah, I think that would be a lot of fun too. And also, I think it would be very educational for other people watching it, because they're seeing a development or an evolution of a project or a technique or
Yeah. Yeah.
something. And I'm often very attracted to that kind of thing when I'm watching other people's YouTube videos as well. So, is there any advice? My last question. Do you have any advice for anyone who might want to get started in, and I call this an art form because it is art, but
Yeah.
want to get started into quilting?
I watched another interview you did, and I kind of have the same exact advice. Is like, you know, I see it as take lessons from someone who sees it as fun and is not so focused on, sewing the quarter-inch seam for an hour until you get it perfect, because then the next time you sit down, it's not going to be perfect again anyway. To find someone that a teacher or a YouTube video or anything, but just find someone that really is enjoying it and embracing the fun side of it instead of the precision, you have to rip it out thing. I'm very seldom rip stuff out. So, I think of it as that way. Find someone who can help you that just loves it and learn the joy of it before you really get into the technical details of it. And you may never get into the technical details of it, and that's fine.
Yeah.
But to look at it that way, find someone who can inspire it to be fun for you, rather than a lot of quilt classes, 9 patch, go in and match the corners. I
Mhm.
would like almost like interview teachers or interview YouTube channels that you want to
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah, true. Yeah, I think that's very important advice. Keep fun in what you're doing because after all, this is supposed to be a hobby. This is supposed to relieve
Yeah.
stress. You don't want to create more stress in your life. Heaven only knows we have a lot of stress in the modern world anyways. We don't need to go looking for it. And as you said, and you've used the term several times, your sewing room is your happy place. And
Yeah.
same for me. This is where you can forget about all the other tension and things going on, the conflicts in the world, and just do something that brings you pure joy. And so what if you make a little mistake? It's not like this will, end the world.
Right.
The thing, just, learn from it, move on. Was it someone said precision is now I can't think of the expression, but precision isn't everything, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It's not the
Yeah.
expression, but you know what I mean. But anyways, yeah, I think that's good advice. Find the joy and keep the joy in whatever you're doing. So thank you.
Right.
I want to thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview. This was excellent. This is great. I
Sure.
encourage
It's
everyone to
fun.
check out the Copycat Quilter on YouTube. Give your support to all of that. And yeah, we look forward to seeing more wonderful stuff on your channel as well with that. So thank you so much. Just stay on the line with me as I end this, please. But
Okay.
thanks again, Ginger. That was great.
Sure.